Hello everyone, it's Gamer0 here. Today I've decided to post a video on how to properly distribute your stats for swords, what kind of swords require what kind of stats and what scenarios, and what kind of skills are best for specific swords. A lot of people think they understand this, but then, I see their builds and they really don't, so I've decided this video would probably be a good idea. In a future video, I will go ahead and give a build for a Gigas Cedar and Blue Rose, because I don't think I've done that yet. That will be two different videos that I put out. But for this video, I'm just gonna explain to you how how the stats work, why it is that you want them set up a certain way, and what kind of skills you want for what weapon and why. And I will do so by first showing you the way that the stats look on these weapons. Now, don't go and copy what I did with like the explosive attack or anything, because that really was only put there because I was messing around with shield matrix. It is just a fun way for me to mess around. But anyway, look at the stats. You'll see that for the Blue Rose sword, and keep in mind, this is not an above max crit rate, it's just regular crit rate. It has 43.35% crit rate, and its crit damage is 480. While 480 isn't really that high, for a crit rate that high, that is actually pretty good, especially since the base power is as high as it actually is. But it's of course it means that each hit doesn't really do as much damage as like the Gigas Cedar would, though it is overly broken for anything below 90% melee defense. But once you reach that number, you are going to want as much damage as you possibly can. The crit rate's not as important. So for the Blue Rose sword, you would want to focus less on crit amount and less on defense and focus more on damage, because you need to sacrifice that extra defense to be able to do more damage, so that a way you can make as much of those crits as you can. So of course you wouldn't go super low on luck, but you'd put in a good amount of luck to still be able to get the crits. Even though it has a really high crit rate, because it's a sword. Crits are everything for it. Dex, base for what you would hold the weapon. And AGI, that is what gives the most defense. So you're going to want to bring that up as high as you possibly can. Intelligence, just enough for debuffs, because you're going to have enough vitality, and you're going to have enough strength that with the build that you're going to be able to use armor form and power form. So that's how you want to build it. You want to put in the extra strength, and without sacrificing all your defense, you want to put in enough stats really to be able to use your buffs, and that should really do everything you need for damage. And for the Gigas Cedar, because it has a, you'll see that where did I put it? There we go. The Gigas Cedar has a pretty low crit rate. But the crit damage is insane. So you want to focus more on, getting more hits, even if that is at the sacrifice of damage. So skills that do more hits, regardless of whether they do more or less damage, is going to be your focus, because it's base crit damage and melee power being so much significantly higher. So that's why you would put the strength that you need for the skills that you want, and to be able to hold the sword, of course, the dex that you need to be able to hold your sword, and as much luck as you could possibly get. And with that, you're going to want to have all the defense you can, because you can afford to be defensive with the weapon that does this much damage. I believe, I forgot to tell you, a lot of people believe Dex does, a lot of people believe because Dex does crit damage that it is more important than strength on a sword. When they tell you that, they do not know what they are talking about. Strength is more important because if, I'll just show you. As you can see, I'll show you using the Gigas Cedar actually. As you can see, it has 3,595 melee power on this weapon. So strength is 127, 122 for Dex. I'm gonna go ahead and put those on there and equip it. So you see this? It actually increases in base damage. The higher your strength goes, it increases the base power. Everything that that increases the damage of the sword, including crit damage and chips and everything scales off of base melee power. That is why the melee power is the most important. While Dex minorly increases weapon damage and crit damage, which makes it really good for guns, just not for swords. While it increases those things, it doesn't do it all that much. And as you can see, it doesn't affect base power at all. Meanwhile, the higher your strength, the more base melee power you have. So the more power you have in general. It doesn't tell you this on your weapon. The melee power remains the same, but go on here, the weapon attack, as you can see, has significantly increased. Now, I'm going to go on and explain the builds to you. Some people like to dual wield in order to hold these weapons because, you know, it enables you to do things like use gun buffs, debuffs, things like that, and extra sword skills like dual orbital, which you can't when you're single wielding. That is not a good idea for these swords because their strength and dex requirements so high. Yes, I understand if you want extra damage, strength is a good idea, but if your goal is to do extra damage, you do not want the extra dex. The extra dex takes so much away, you will not have the other stats that you need or want. It does not add enough damage to even make it worth it. Whenever you're using the Blue Rose or the Gigas Cedar, do not dual wield them. So what you want to do is use the stats you see available here. I mean, not stats, sorry, skills. The Azure Tempest, it is a great skill for the Gigas Cedar, not for the Blue Rose. It gets in a good amount of hits, but its damage is very negligible. If you put it on a Blue Rose against someone that actually has proper defense, you will not hardly do anything to them. The only people that will actually die to this are people that are lacking in defense. If you have it on a Gigas Cedar, it gets in a whole lot of hits, so it crits. It has a really good chance at critting, so even though it does almost no damage, with the Gigas Cedar doing as much damage as it does, it has a very good chance of critting and killing the person. Divine Blossom, it does 2 hits, while Vorpal Strike does 1. Vorpal Strike is significantly more powerful. So if someone doesn't have Avoid Instant Death, or if you could hit them at a range where you could just turn around and swipe them, Vorpal Strike is a great idea, but Vorpal Strike is something you don't really need on a Gigas Cedar. On a Gigas Cedar, you would want something like Divine Blossom, because you could do 2 hits, which increases your chance of critting, and if you crit on your first hit, you will kill the person no matter what, because their Avoid Instant Death will not save them. But if they don't have Avoid Instant Death, it's just going to kill them. Vorpal Strike, it does a lot of damage. Just half charging it with about any weapon that's built properly is enough to kill somebody. That's why Vorpal Strike is great for weapons that does less damage but crits more often, like the Blue Rose. For the Blue Rose, Divine Blossom against someone, I believe I just told you this, Divine Blossom against someone that has higher defense, it won't do very much. But if you put a Vorpal Strike on, halfway charge it, and hit them with it, you'll charge no longer than you will with Divine Blossom, but you're going to kill them. And it's almost always going to crit, so it's basically a guaranteed kill. Cyclone 2. It does knock back people that use Human Fortress. It will not knock them back. Its damage is also very negligible. It will not be good on something like a Blue Rose for the same reason. It doesn't really get all that many hits in, so it's not really good for much of anything besides knocking back or just getting a quick AoE attack. So, you know, it's never something I really choose to use, but it can do enough damage on a Gigas Cedar, but on anything else, it does not do enough damage unless people's defense is also very negligible. So, horizontal square. Version 3 actually gets in more hits, while version 4 does more damage. So, version 3, I would put that on a Gigas Cedar, because this is a very hard-hitting skill. So, which is why I would use it on a Blue Rose as well. But on a Gigas Cedar, I would go ahead and put on version 3, because it gets more hits, so it has a higher chance of critting. And with that really high damage, it just means more chances to kill somebody. With Blue Rose, put on a version 4. It gets less hits, but it does significantly more damage. And that way, you have a higher chance of killing someone before they escape, because you need to get more hits to make up for your lack of damage, but you're pretty much always critting. So that's why this is a great skill for that. For both those weapons, version 3 for Gigas Cedar, version 4 for Blue Rose. Star Splash. Star Splash 4 is really the only one worth using as far as PvP goes. PvE, you can use version 3 because, you know, it's the higher version and it'll hit longer, but it takes longer to activate. For PvP, you want to use version 4 because it's almost instant activation, but it doesn't last very long. The thing about Star Splash is it gets in so many hits. That's what's good about it. It gets in so many hits so quickly. It does so much less damage than all the other skills, but it does so many hits so fast that it doesn't matter. Regardless of whether it is a Gigas Cedar or a Blue Rose, this is a good skill to have because of that. I've already explained Vorpal Strike. Halfway charge something, it'll die. Good on really anything, but on a Gigas Cedar, Divine Blossom's the best choice. Sharp Nail does really good damage, gets in multiple hits. If it's a higher version, you could jump up and attack in the air, or attack while falling, you know, whatever it is you want to do with it. It is a good damage skill, but it does take a lot of stats. To be honest, you can kind of make use of it on anything, but it doesn't get in that many hits, so I would not use it on something like a Gigas Cedar. It is definitely usable, just it's not as good of a choice as Horizontal Square 3, Divine Blossom, Azure Tempest, Star Splash. All those things are really a better choice than Sharp Nail as far as the Gigas Cedar goes. I'm going to go ahead and explain Sword Barrier, though I hope I don't actually need to. If you shoot someone's feet, you could still damage them through it. And if you shoot their back, you can damage them. You cannot damage their head or the rest of the front of their body so long as they have it active. Sword Barrier 4 works better than all the other versions. It is a good skill to use in PvP and PvE. You have high enough defense anyway, it's really not necessary. Oh yeah, Human Fortress. I've explained this in other videos before. Human Fortress 1, don't use anything above Human Fortress 1 whenever you put on whenever you put on a Human Fortress 2, 3, or 4, it adds on defense. Version 2 is where it starts adding on defense, so it's only really version like Armor Form 1 or Guard Field 1 is the equivalent of Human Fortress 2. and go, as it goes up, so on and so forth. It only gets up to version 3. So best option, Human Fortress 1. You won't get staggered or, you know, knocked back or whatever, and you could still put on a better version of defense. So that makes it a good thing to use. It is a great thing to use. Just always use version 1 with higher defense. I believe with that, oh wait, hold on, actually, I almost forgot to tell you. A little hidden effect that you would find, armor break shot versus viral shot. This is something you're going to want to know for swords. Armor break shot 1, if you use it, it recharges faster, though it wears off slightly faster. It recharges way faster, so it's easier to get more targets that are more separated. It shoots faster, so that way, if people try to dodge it, their chances of dodging it are less. They have way less chances to dodge it if they miss their opportunity. And even if they do, it recharges so quickly. All you need to do is wait for an opportunity and hit them with it. It does not have anything to do with increasing crit rate. So, but the thing is, if you put it on like a blue rose sword, that just means more chances to debuff more people. It already has a really high crit rate, so that's not really something you ought to worry about. Viral shot, it's supposed to be the exact same thing as power break and armor break. Increase defense, increase damage dealt to your enemy, decrease their damage dealt to you. It's supposed to be the same thing, but it actually has quite a few differences. It takes way longer to recharge, and it's way easier to dodge because it gives you so many more opportunities. So you're pretty much just out of luck if you don't hit someone with it. But it is really great because it frees up an extra skill slot if you want, you know, damage reduction on them as well. I mean, if you don't want them doing as much damage, you know, it's really good. You don't have to use the extra the extra slot for it. And a little hidden effect that it doesn't tell you, when you use it, you'll find that you do more crits. So it's really good for something like a Gigas Cedar, because as long as you can time it properly and you're close enough, hit them with it, you will increase your chances of critting them with the Gigas Cedar. But that's really its only use. Compared to power break and armor break, if you don't factor that in, it has more drawbacks than it does advantages. So on guns or on a blue rose, I would use armor break, power break, but for Gigas Cedar and also for type Z sword, I would use viral shot. Do keep that in mind, because that is something you will find very useful. Melee power. Next thing to talk about. Everyone knows is use melee booster on swords. What people do not seem to understand, and I'm really sick of explaining this to people because for some reason nobody gets it. It's like no one even sees anything besides melee booster. No one looks at the description. If you use melee booster, you have way more damage to anything melee you were doing. You do so much more damage, but your bullet circle accuracy is terrible afterwards. Do not use a gun and sword together. You can buff with the gun, you can debuff with the gun. Don't use it to shoot. If you are in PvP and you were trying to kill people with a gun and a sword and you're using melee booster, it is not going to work. Unless that person has no defense, it is not gonna work. The bullet circle accuracy, the bullet circle is so huge, it's like trying to shoot a mouse with a cannon. It is just try and it's the equivalent of trying to shoot a quarter from 5 miles away with a revolver. It is not going to work for you. Don't do it. So really the only thing you want to do as far as guns go when you have a sword is putting on a gun that you could use to buff or debuff. Do not use extra stats to be able to afford to put on the gun that you want. It sacrifices all the other stats that you could be using for your sword. A sword and a gun do not go together. You cannot fight with both of them. Pick one or the other. In PvE, you're aiming at them, so it's not as bad of a situation. In PvP, do not do it. And I know I seem to act very strongly about it. It's because people sit there and they argue with you about it until you sit there for 30 minutes explaining it to them. It drives me crazy. Just don't do it. And that there is pretty much everything you need to know when making a build for either of the weapons. But I am going to tell you also, because you can afford to have the extra stats for defense with the Gigas Cedar, using defensive accessories with the Gigas Cedar is a great idea. But do keep in mind, if you don't have avoidance to death and you are going up against the Gigas Cedar user, unless all they got's like 3 garbage chips on it or something, and they don't know how to make a build, they are going to one-tap you. It is a great option for defense, and you can afford it with a Gigas Cedar, but don't rely on it. Regardless, avoid instant death is always a good option if you are in PvP. It's good in PvE too, but in PvP, in like a sword v sword fight or something, it is a great option. It is always great in the case that the other party has a sword. If you have really low defense with a different kind of weapon, avoid instant death. Great idea. Most important, best thing ever. If you have high defense, it is not a have to have, but it is still recommended. And with that, that is really everything. I'm gonna go ahead and reset that because I'm not gonna make a build with any of this. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any kinds of videos you want to see in the future, please drop something down in the comments. I always check my comments. I will either reply to you or just go ahead and post a video if that's what you ask for. You ask for something, I gotcha. I'm gonna post a video pretty soon on a Gigas Cedar build and a Blue Rose build. I do not know if I will post those at the same time, but I will post them. Anyway, keep enjoying playing the game, and all of you have a nice day.